Hello and welcome to Cleveland Classic Cinema. Tonight's movie is 1940's The Fatal Hour, directed by William Nye. In the 1930s to the early 40s, Hollywood and the country went through kind of a love affair with Chinese detectives. The most well-known is, of course, Charlie Chan, but there were a couple that were less well-known but just as popular, like Mr. Moto and the detective in tonight's movie, Mr. Wong. They were all entertaining films, and although my favorites were the Charlie Chan films, mainly because of the sharp wit of Charlie Chan, probably one of the most laid-back detectives of them all, the one we're going to see tonight is Mr. Wong, who's even more laid-back than Charlie Chan. Before we get to that, however, a little history is in order. Charlie Chan was originally created by writer Earl Del Biggers. While vacationing in Hawaii in 1919, he began formulating the plot for his book, The House Without a Key. When he finally got around to writing the story 4 years later, he was inspired to create a Chinese-American detective after reading about two Chinese-American detectives working for the Honolulu police force, Chang Apana and Li Fook. Living in Los Angeles at the time, disliking the stereotypical portrayal of the Chinese as Red Peril types like Sax Rohman or Fu Manchu, he created Charlie Chan. Chan was a minor character in the book, but he caught the attention of the public in the first three Chan films. 1926's The House Without a Key, 1927's The Chinese Parrot, and 1929's Behind the Red Curtain starred Japanese actors in the first two and a Korean actor in the third. They didn't do well at the box office, and it wasn't until a Caucasian played Chan that the films began to catch on. The first one to play Chan was Swedish actor Warner Oland, who claimed to be of Mongolian ancestry, in 1931's Charlie Chan Carries On. He went on to star in 15 more Chan films for 20th Century Fox, often with Key Luke, an honest-to-God Chinese-American actor, as number one son. Although he never became a true Hollywood star, Luke was quite good as the anxious, Americanized son always trying to help Pop solve cases. Luke went on to appear as Kato in the original Green Hornet serials from 1931 through 1941, and is probably best remembered as the blind Master Po in TV's Kung Fu series. After Warner Oland died in 1938, Sidney Toler was cast as Chan and played him in 11 more features, teamed with number two son Jimmy Chan, played by Sen Young. Toler's Chan was a little sharper in attitude than Oland's portrayal, adding an edge to the films that were missing due to Oland's gentler style. Roland Winters was the last of the actors to portray Chan in the classic series. Another series in the Asian detective canon was the Mr. Moto series, starring, of all people, Peter Lorre. I've seen several of these movies, and Lorre was excellent as Moto. Lorre, at the time, was having some physical problems, and so was doubled during the action scenes by stuntman extraordinaire Harvey Perry, who also doubled Harold Lloyd in Danger First during the silent era, in addition to countless other stunts, executing some pretty cool jiu-jitsu moves in the course of the films. I hope to someday give you a rundown on the career of this amazing man, but unfortunately this isn't the time. In addition to being a detective, Mr. Moto took a few pages from Sherlock Holmes, as he was an expert chemist, master of martial arts, and adept at disguise. Mr. Moto was a lot more active than Charlie Chan, taking action whenever necessary and even killing his opponents. Since Moto was a Japanese character, the series was retired with the advent of World War II. Mr. Wong, the third of the Oriental detectives, first appeared on film anyway, in 1938's Mr. Wong Detective. Monogram Studios attempted cashing in on the popularity of the Chan and Moto films. Boris Karloff played the role of Jimmy Lee Wong in the first 5 films before tiring of the role and handing it to none other than number one son Key Luke in 1940's Phantom of Chinatown. The first time in decades an Oriental detective was played by an actual Asian, and ironically the last film of the series. The Fatal Hour is the 4th film in the series and concerns Mr. Wong investigating the death of his friend Captain Street's best friend Dan O'Grady. Wong uncovers first a smuggling operation and then the killer, bringing all to justice in the end. There's like zero action in this movie. All of it is, for the most part, talk, but it's never dull. Well, almost never. Well, actually, it is dull. A lot of the movement in the film is generated by the exchanges between Captain Street and the various characters, mostly between him and Bobby Logan, the spunky female reporter, and is there any other kind, for the Herald. The film opens with her visiting Captain Street, and we know immediately what kind of relationship they share. Friendly but adversarial. At least she never says that people have a right to know at any time during the story. As a matter of fact, rights don't seem to mean a whole lot to the cops in this movie, something I'm sure that drives modern viewers to distraction. What you have to understand is that these movies were made at a time before the Supreme Court ruled on what is referred to as the Miranda decision in 1966. In 1963, a man named Ernesto Miranda was arrested by the Phoenix Police Department in connection with the rape and murder of an 18-year-old girl. After several hours of interrogation, Miranda signed a confession which included the statement, "I do hereby swear that I make this statement voluntarily and of my own free will with no threats, coercion, or promises of immunity, and with full knowledge of my legal rights, understanding any statement I make may be used against me." Now, the main problem with this is that he had not been informed of his right to have a lawyer present during questioning. When his court-appointed lawyer brought this fact out during the trial, his objection was overruled and Miranda was convicted for the crime, drawing a sentence of 20 to 30 years for both the rape and the kidnapping, sentences to run concurrently. His lawyer appealed to the Supreme Court of Arizona, who voted 5-4 to affirm the sentence, while emphasizing the fact that Miranda didn't ask for a lawyer. The conviction was overturned, but Miranda was sent to prison after a retrial that presented other evidence incriminating him. After being paroled in 1972, he returned to his old neighborhood and made a modest living signing the Miranda cards carried by policemen. He was stabbed to death in a bar fight in January of 1976. If you'd like to see how rights were trampled before Miranda, I'd refer you to 1956's Dragnet with Jack Webb, wherein the civil rights of the suspect are not only trampled on but beaten into the dust with a spiked baseball bat. Just in case you haven't noticed yet, there's not a whole hell of a lot to say about this movie, which is why you got that short history of the Miranda warning just now. If I can't make it entertaining, I try to make it informative. On to the bios. Boris Karloff was born William Henry Pratt on November 23rd in Camberwell, London, England. He appeared in an amazing 205 films and television shows during the course of his long career, and although thought of mainly as a horror actor, played many and varied roles over the years. Educated at London University in anticipation of a career as a diplomat, he gave that up and moved on to Canada, where he joined a touring stage company, adopting the stage name Boris Karloff. He toured the States for about 10 years before moving to California and getting occasional work in movies, supplementing his income as a truck driver. He appeared in various serials and 80s silent and sound films before finally getting his big break when he was cast as the monster in 1931's Frankenstein, directed by James Whale. The studio purposely kept the looks and the actor portraying the monster a closely guarded secret, even to the point of having makeup artist Jack Pierce walk Karloff to the set with a towel covering his entire head to prevent having pictures taken of him in character. This was augmented by the fact that when Karloff finally appears on screen, Whale had him back into the doorway to keep the suspense at a breaking point. They even refused to put Karloff in the closing credits, substituting a question mark for his name. Although this seems at first glance unfair to Karloff, the movie was a smash hit and everyone was wondering what the name of the actor playing the monster was. There was some concern that Marilyn Harris, the 7-year-old girl who played Maria in the film, would be frightened of Karloff in makeup as the monster. When the time came to travel to the lake location the scene was to be shot at, Marilyn ran from her car right up to Karloff, who was in full makeup and costume, and taking his hand asked, "May I drive with you?" Karloff responded, "Would you, darling?" And she hopped into the car with him. His name was eventually released to the public and he became a hot property, landing a featured credit in 1932's Scarface, although that film was shot before Frankenstein was released. He followed this up with a role as a sinister, scarred butler in 1932's The Old Dark House, Fu Manchu himself in the same year's The Mask of Fu Manchu, and as Imhotep, the title character in The Mummy. He appeared as the monster in 1935's Bride of Frankenstein and 1939's Son of Frankenstein, Mord the Executioner in 1939's Tower of London, and a series of mad or misguided doctors and dozens of other horror and science fiction movies over the next years. He appeared in 1936 as Charlie Chan at the Opera and soon after appeared in the Mr. Wong series. Karloff was one of the founding members of the Screen Actors Guild, and his daughter remembered he often carried a roll of dimes in his pocket so he could use payphones for guild business, since he knew the studio, which was rabidly anti-union, had tapped his home phone. In his first Broadway role, he appeared as Mortimer Brewster in Arsenic and Old Lace, a character who flew into a murderous rage when he was told he looked like Boris Karloff, and later played Captain Hook in Peter Pan. He did a lot of TV and revitalized his career hosting Thriller, a truly excellent anthology series that concentrated mostly on horror rather than sci-fi, mystery, or just outright bizarreness like The Twilight Zone. He appeared in a number of films directed by Roger Corman, such as 1963's The Raven, and appeared in an excellent Italian horror film anthology, 1963's Black Sabbath, directed by Mario Bava. His last truly good role was as aging horror star Byron Orlock, going up against a serial killer in 1968's Targets, directed by Peter Bogdanovich. As if he weren't unforgettable enough, he became an enduring favorite of children and adults all over the world by narrating and playing the title role in Chuck Jones's Christmas TV special, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which is, incidentally, the only perennial Christmas special I will still watch as an adult. Boris Karloff died from emphysema on February 2, 1969 in Midhurst, Sussex, England. Grant Withers was born Granville G. Withers on January 17, 1904 in Pueblo, Colorado. He appeared in over 200 movies during his career, first getting into acting while attending Kemper Military Academy. He worked as a reporter for the Los Angeles Record before getting into acting, mostly landing roles as heavies due to his gruff manner and large size. Yeah, I know about that. He drew some criticism when, at the age of 25, he eloped with 17-year-old Loretta Young. From the 1940s on, he played supporting roles, his mobility limited by back problems. Grant Withers committed suicide by barbiturate overdose on March 27, 1959 in North Hollywood, California. Marjorie Reynolds was born Marjorie Goodspeed on August 12, 1917 in Boole, Idaho. Raised in Los Angeles, she made her movie debut at 6 years old, leaving movies a few years later to acquire a normal education. Upon her return to films as a teenager in the mid-1930s, she paid her dues, appearing in walk-ons, bit parts, and then did the Western route for a few years, appearing with Buck Jones, Tex Ritter, Tim Holt, and Roy Rogers. I have to figure appearing in tonight's movie was part of that dues-paying process. Her first major break was appearing in 1942's Holiday Inn with Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire. After this, however, she continued making B-movies, eventually moving into TV and appearing as William Bendix's wife on The Life of Riley. Marjorie Reynolds died of congestive heart failure on February 1, 1997 in Manhattan Beach, California. At the end of the day, there's not much to say about The Fatal Hour. It's just another one of those thousands of films churned out by the studios to fill the lower half of a double bill, but it's a fair time waster. There is one thing to recommend this film, however. When Mr. Wong goes to the radio store and gets a demonstration of the new wireless remote control radio, make sure you check out that remote. So right now, sit back, relax, and enjoy The Fatal Hour right here on Cleveland Classic Cinema.